Hello. As we know, hypokalemia can be caused if you are not eating enough of potassium. Hypokalemia is a low potassium in the blood. So there are certain foods that consist of a lot of potassium, and I want to mention some of them so that if you have a diet that is fulfilling the potassium level, then you don't need to take any medications, and that would be a very good goal to achieve as a patient. So, and as a doctor, of course, this is something that you should always strive for, to always give dietary advice first. If it's not possible, if the patient is not complying, he's not doing what you say, or if the diet alone does not help, then of course you need to add treatment with medications. But it's good to know which type of foods consist a lot of potassium, because we know that many foods have different spectrum of nutrition. Some have a high amount of sodium, some have high amount of fat, of proteins, and so on. And today we'll deal with the potassium level. And the highest ones are dried figs, so figs, and also dried fruits. So anything that have any dry fruits, for example dates or dried figs, these all have very high content of potassium. These are very good. And of course other ones like nuts, avocado, you have also bran cereals, all these have very high content of potassium. And if we're talking about fruits, we have bananas, we have kiwis, oranges, mangoes, and so on. Banana is a very known fruit having a high content of potassium, but actually dried fruits, as I mentioned previously, like dates or nuts or avocados, have a much higher potassium level. And if you want to achieve a higher potassium in your body, bananas are good, but these ones have a much higher level. And of course with vegetables, we have spinach, tomatoes, broccoli, we have carrots, potatoes, all these can have a high potassium level. And when we are talking about meats, then we have, for example, steak, beef, pork, lamb, and so on. But as we know, a lot of meat is not so healthy to eat. So you should try to limit this type of food, because if you want to choose between vegetables, fruits, or meat, please always choose vegetables and fruits. I'm not saying that you should not eat meat. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm saying that you should limit meat as much as possible. Meat is good when we're talking about proteins and iron and so on, but when we're talking about potassium, and if we have to decide which to choose, then please choose, as I said, vegetables like spinach, tomatoes, broccoli, carrots, potatoes, fruits like bananas, kiwis, oranges, and so on. And the highest content, as I said, was dried fruits like dates or dried figs or nuts, avocados, and so on. So these are some of the most common vegetables, fruits that I mentioned, but there are of course others, and you can check the internet for more. I just wanted you to know that diet alone can be enough to treat hypokalemia, and you should always strive to increase the level of potassium to around 80 to 120 millimole per day. And the lower the potassium in the level in the body is, the higher the risk of hypertension, so blood pressure is increased. And as you know, if you have very high blood pressure, then you can get stroke and chronic kidney disease. So it's actually very important to eat these fruits, vegetables that I mentioned, because you want to live as long as possible, and if you have a very low potassium, you can die out of stroke or chronic kidney disease. So thank you very much for listening.